Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world.
Welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today for a very special recording. This is our first live out of my studio recording here in Vegas. I have Rhett Power. Welcome to the show.
Ross, great to be here, man.
Thank you. Well, Rhett is from Washington, although when I said, where's home? He said, well, Delta Lounge, or was it United Lounge, spends 200 plus days a year traveling.
That's right.
Wow. Not my happy place in terms of airports. So Rhett Power is a globally recognized executive coach. He's an author and entrepreneur. The CEO of Adaptability, Inc. We'll find out a bit more about that later. And he's also a Forbes columnist, and he helps startups and founders and leaderships gain strategic focus and high performance. Now, I used a phrase yesterday when we met about make it up, make it real, and make it reoccur from Dan Sullivan. And that resonated, particularly with a client that you're working with at the moment, how to make things reoccur. And he's also a member of the MG 100, the Marshall Goldsmith 100, and a host of bestseller TV on Apple TV. So I want to find out a bit more about that as well. What did I miss?
Well, you got it. You nailed it. And we're going to have you on bestseller TV. I mean, this book is fantastic.
Sounds like a plan. We will do that. So we're at the Transform conference, and somebody asked me yesterday, so what's your role and what's your soul? And I thought, ooh,
yes,
I like that. So we've heard a bit about your role, but tell me about your soul.
Well, wow, that is such a fantastic question. And nobody ever asks that question, do they?
Well, other than yesterday at Transform,
I never heard it. I've never heard it at a conference. It's always, what do you do?
Yeah.
Why are you here? Who's your customer? It's the typical stuff. And I love that question. And my soul is, I'm an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I love the creation phase. I remember distinctly sitting in a restaurant with my business partner. We were drawing out the concept for this toy, children's toy. And 18 months later, you see it on the shelf at Toys R Us. Right? It's creating a book and then seeing it on the shelf, getting people's feedback from when they've read it, and it's a light bulb has gone off in their mind. So in my heart and my soul, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a creator. In a lot of ways, I consider myself an artist, and I actually consider artists, entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah.
Right, because you have to be brave to put your stuff out into the world, and as entrepreneurs and artists, we put our stuff out into the world.
It's true.
For judgment.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of it, that process is a learning process. Right? I've said before on the show a few times, art, books, these things, they're never finished. They're just abandoned at some point. And I think that's really true. I've just come from Salim Ismail's Meaning of Life talk last week. And when this question came up of what's your soul, I instantly went a bit of recency bias to his talk where he talks about the soul and soul expression, the light expression. And often what gets in the way is our subconscious bias, trauma, parents, these things, and our consciousness, our conscious bias. And when the kaleidoscope turns and it shines through, that's our soul in creative flow. Mm-hmm. And that visualization and analogy really resonated with me of how are we adapting? What are we adapting? Our soul has this expression, yearning to create, to some form of artistry expression, our value in the world, unconditional love. And we put all these things in the way. And when we can do the work to perhaps rotate that kaleidoscope and allow it to shine, it is such a moment of magic. Have you had any experiences like that? You mentioned, the joy from getting feedback with the market, whether it's products we create, books we create. But can you remember moments where you felt, I'm in flow of my soul expression?
100%. I mean, I love operating in that zone, in that space, in that flow, right? It's where, when I just finished a new book about our self-talk, our inner dialogue.
Okay.
And that book, was one of the best things that I think I've ever done. The reason is, and to your point, we often get in our own way, right? And this sort of process that myself and two of the other authors went through to understand our own inner dialogue and our own obstacles and the things that we're putting in our own way was really enlightening. And to be able to come up with tools just for myself, so that when I realize that I'm limiting myself, or I'm in my own way, or I've got two voices. I've got one voice on this shoulder and one voice on this shoulder, and I'm letting this one over here, the one that's based on fear.
Yeah.
When I'm letting that one dominate the conversation, to be able to say, time out, let me reframe, let me regroup here, let me think about what I'm saying to myself, because it's getting in my way of doing good work and doing the work that really makes me who I am. So that book was one of those moments for me when we were able to close it and say it's done and send it off to the publisher. I was really happy that we went through this process of self-discovery. We spent 5 years working and researching this and talking to people and talking to leaders, talking to athletes, world-class athletes, people who have accomplished, world, just unbelievable things, right? Push beyond their limits, to understand how our brain works and to understand how we can get in that flow state more often. But in order to do that, you've got to be able to get out of your own head.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you have, in that discovery of learning that you went on, do you have some things that now have shifted how you do things moving forwards? What are some of those that have shifted for you?
I mean, it's number one, it's starting the days off with a meditation and with reflection. It's ending the day with a meditation and reflection, right? And those things have, and sometimes in high stress times and times when there's a lot going on and things are moving, we're here at this conference this week, it's moving really fast.
Yeah. Moving
really fast. Sometimes I need a break in the middle of the day, even if it's 10 minutes.
Yeah. Just to ground.
Just take a time out and say, breathe. Before we came on, we breathed.
Yeah.
Took a breath. Yeah. Right. That's really important, to sort of ground yourself and not spin and sometimes it requires journaling. If I catch a repeated thought that's stopping me or getting in my own way or creating negativity, writing that down so that I can come back to that in my reflections, say, what's that about?
Yeah.
And understand where that's coming from. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of discipline, but it helps me stay in that flow state, and be able to operate in that space.
It's interesting. I'm fairly new to meditation, so I came to it through predominantly my wife's experience. I jokingly shared with people close to us that for a couple of years I shared a bed not only with my wife but with Joe Dispenza, because every evening she'd put Joe on, and so by the drip, drip, drip of Joe, to then last year went on a retreat that he puts on and experienced meditation in a moment in my life, and I was able to see it differently. And one phrase I really liked is how he describes what meditation is, and whether it's the real definition or what, I'm not sure, but to become familiar with. Become familiar with. And that removed almost this expectation of me to reach enlightenment, to have these, I'm meditating, and it's called practice for a reason, just to become familiar with. So when you talked about, starting the day with it, ending the day with it, journaling, to become familiar with past self, current self, future self. What am I letting go of? What am I saying stop doing? What am I saying continue? What am I saying start? A lot of that is the adaptation journey, and it's the intentionality of it for those things. So in that book, when does it get released? What's the actual title? And before we go on, I am excited about another one that you mentioned to me of a little bit better. But before we get on there, tell me a little bit more about the title of the book and when it comes out.
So coming out September 30th.
Okay.
It's called Headamentals.
Headamentals.
So it's being in the right head. You got to have the right headspace to be able to lead yourself, to be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. It's all about starting in the right headspace.
Okay.
And so you got to have the right mental exercises, the right mental work to be able to perform at a high level.
Yeah.
And so that's where the title came from. And again, it's we all have our inner dialogue. We all have our self-talk.
Yeah.
Being able to optimize it for your performance is really key. And one of the things that we talk about in the book that I didn't mention is when a leader, and this is the unique angle to this book, when a leader has negative self-talk, what we know now is it impacts their teams and the people that they lead.
It makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense.
Totally impacts team dynamics,
Yeah.
team culture, and team performance. And so, particularly as a leader or a founder or somebody that's managing teams, this is a great book for you because it's going to give you some tools to keep yourself in a better state, so that your team can be in a better state. Right.
I've in various workshops used the analogy of a boat going through the water leaves a wake, and that wake can then affect other things in the water. So if you are a leader, if you are a team, be conscious of your wake. Now you might think, oh, I'm a nimble speedboat, away I go. Their perception of you is that you're large, influence, you're responsible for maybe whether I get promoted, whatever might happen in my career, get the projects I want to work on, the tasks I want to work on, create that environment. That is a massive wake for them of the influence. So it's the same sort of thing, that viral effect of how do I show up and how am I contributing in just my own energy level, my speech power.
It ripples.
My breathing. It's all of those ripples. Every part of us, of our energy, our body embodiment, all of those things are having an impact of those ripples of that wake. And when we think about this, it can then almost paralyze leaders. Right? You can come to a conference like this, and leaders need this, they need this, they need this, they need adaptability, they need to breathe, they need to do this. Bloody hell, I go, wow. A lot of responsibility, and I just find it an eternal journey to figure out when is the right time to dial up or dial down certain parts of this, of new insights. If someone's going to invest the time in reading it, what will they say thank you to you for as a result of reading it?
I think they're going to understand how their brain works a little bit better.
Okay.
I think they're going to understand and be able to. We have a method in there that's going to allow you to recognize that talk and how it's affecting you.
Yeah.
Be able to take a time out and give you some tools to be able to. We'll say manage is not the right word, but recognize it, short circuit that negative dialoge.
Yeah.
And then give you some tools to actually reframe things, and get it. Basically, it's creating new habits.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So creating new habits is hard. It's hard work. I'm not saying this book is easy. It's easy to read. It's easy to understand it. Harder to do. Harder to apply.
Isn't that true of everything in life? Right.
And
exercise, diet, sleep. Right. It's hard to apply.
It's like exercise. It's like going to the gym for your brain. It takes some work, it takes some discipline, but at the end of the day, what they'll thank us for is my team is better, I'm better, we're performing better, and that's what they're going to thank us for.
Okay.
Now you got to do the work. Yeah, it's not easy. It's like going to the gym because it requires you to take a pen and paper every day, think about what you're doing, what you're saying to yourself, and that's not easy.
Yeah.
But
so alongside spending 5 years on a book, and you've had many books, you've got a another one that you're talking about to me, and series of these things. You also are in the field doing stuff with people that often make up part of the books. But tell me about some projects that you're really excited about at the moment, and what kind of adaptations they're going through, and how are you supporting them around the whole theme of our journey, our story, and our pod is navigating, known, unknown, planned, unplanned change. So tell me about some projects you're working on that you're excited about supporting their journeys.
I'm excited, as an entrepreneur and not having to run a company anymore, that's making a product and trying to go out to the world. So I'm excited about that. But what we get really excited about is we work with founders and entrepreneurs who are building products and service companies and trying to make it. So two examples right now of two clients that I'm really excited about. One, 25-year-old company. The son took it over from the father about 3 years ago. He's grown it with our help from a $10 million company now to a $60 million company.
Wow.
Had two acquisitions in the middle. They're getting ready for a third. Next year, I'd say in 2 years he'll hit 100 million.
Wow. So a 10x shift.
10x shift.
In that period.
But helping him put the processes in, put the systems in, the right people in the right place. This is a company that hadn't looked at a P&L ever. When we first started, they looked at the money in the bank, the cash in the bank, and that was
their indicator.
That was in their indicator.
Yeah. I know many people's lives who run like that. If I've got money in the bank, then day's good.
Right.
If I'm not. Yeah.
Right. So now, now they have a CFO. We've got a team, and we've got the right management team as they expand. We're working with their second level and third level high potentials to build a bench as they grow and acquire. They're going to need people who know the system that they're operating in, know the company culture, right? So that's really exciting to see them grow and scale.
Give me examples of that. Of how much do you roll your sleeves up? How much of that is augmented with other team members? Give me an understanding of, we can speak to a lot of people, a lot of consultants who say, yeah, this is what I work on, but with no idea underneath the hood of what that looks like. Is that you're going in fractionally, you're rolling the sleeves up and you're sitting down to solve the projects, the challenges, you're writing stuff, or what does it really look like in doing that?
Great example. They're hiring a GM for one of their new locations that they acquired. Okay. We just finished the transition plan, or the onboarding plan for that.
Okay. So their first 100-day. Okay.
Yeah, 6 months. Actually, the first 6 months.
First 6 months.
This is how you're going to help them come into the company as a new hire.
And was that a collaborative? Was that they just want you to do it? So that was a series of working with their team, saying, you're the owner of this piece. I'm going to get all of these sources in and create this plan for the person to then get their feet under the table and implement change. That was
it's so that we walked them through it. It was a hand holding exercise. They're going to do it next time, right? They're going to implement it.
Yeah,
they own the process of making sure that this work gets done, that this person is comfortable, that they know the paperwork, they know the processes, they know who is who in the organization, because there's a lot of cross collaboration. That's a pretty complicated business.
Okay,
and so, but they've got to implement it, right? We help them, give them a framework for what an onboarding plan should look like for this person, so that they get up to speed as quick as they can. So, but they own it, and they've got to make sure that it gets done. But it was a collaborative effort so that they learn how to do it.
So it's getting stuck in, it's working collaboratively,
Yeah.
It's whatever the project and biggest advantage is at hand, whether that's new role recruitment coming in and onboarding, dealing with acquisition, you're in amongst that. And the other example, you said you've got two at the moment. What's the other one that's interesting?
Two that are really, really fascinating. One is a digital influencer. She very well known on Instagram, has built $120 million business in jewelry and in the wedding space, and is growing, looking at expanding into retail, having a retail footprint now.
Right.
That's super exciting to see that business go from an an influencer type business
Mm-hmm.
to now having
a physical,
having a physical place,
retail piece. Yep.
Expanding their team, hiring people who can come in and look at the retail operation, the shipping operation, the manufacturing side of it, right? And having to pull together now a professional team of experienced people from the industry, and from everything from marketing to what's the next. We were talking about this yesterday, making it sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what's the next phase of this business where you can't maybe be the personality. You can't be personality driven anymore. Now it's got to be brand driven.
Yeah.
How do you make that shift? And how do you, right? So I think that's fascinating.
I find it fascinating that for many companies, they're trying to do the reverse, going from retail, traditional bricks and mortar, and trying to unlock how do we leverage this now in the digital space.
Right.
They're going, we've nailed some good growth in the digital space, we want to now go and do some of these other things. Seems really quite strange to me as an example, but I guess that's a sign of our times, right?
We live in an upside down world. I mean,
yeah.
Right. That's a good point. I've never thought about it in that context, but that's a really interesting way to frame it and think about it, because it is backwards from what people are.
For a lot of organizations, people, brands, they don't go that way round.
But they don't have the magic. They don't have that magic that she's captured, right?
Yeah. Interestingly, from a perspective of product licensing, the person and the brand, at CoachCon with Strategic Coach, they had Kathy Ireland there talking. Very good example.
Great example.
I mean, is it one of the top 20 most valuable brands in the world? Started with, was it socks? I think started with socks. And just how do you create from initially that individual to it then being a well-oiled entire supply chain operation of licensed product in so many different industries, and not many make it to that sort of level, right? And it is a challenge of how do you port a niche into perhaps some other associated,
100%.
verticals, different areas before you become then so vanilla where Harley Davidson perfume or all of these other things. It's going to be some interesting decisions during that journey, I guess, for them.
Yeah, and I think it was another fascinating thing about, and I'd say this actually for both of these entrepreneurs, is how do you make that shift? Because at some point, she's not going to want to be the CEO, right? Does she
want to be it now?
Not really.
Probably there by proxy, not by desire.
Right.
Yeah.
By proxy, exactly. Do you bring on somebody else to lead organizationally, and do you focus on the product and the thing that really got you there, right? The service, the product, the image, the brand, the culture.
Yeah.
And is that a more important role? So I think there's some interesting questions around.
Yeah. It's the Marshall, what got you here won't get you there. What a great title, great thesis, and
relevant any day,
relevant
anytime,
in eternity. Of those things of we measure one of the components is around unlearning. How do we intentionally let go of something that was true before that's no longer serving us? And what has changed? Is it the environment? Is it me? Is it my desire? And how do I let go of that? Easy when it stops working, but if it works sometimes, it gives you a little hit every other time.
That's right.
I won that point from the back of the court, 1 in 10. So maybe this is that 1 in 10 versus no, you need to shift up your whole game now, or whatever it may be. And so, in your own career, you've been through things, so you bring that. You obviously have a team. Tell me a little bit more about Accountable, why the name, and what that plays in and around your role and what you bring as well. Tell me more about that.
One of the things that, the reason for the name is accountability has always played a role in my life. And the times that I didn't hold myself accountable, or didn't have an accountability partner, or didn't didn't accountability wasn't playing a part, I was not successful.
Okay. So in your neural net, you've got a link between success and accountability, and they are when they're not there, it doesn't compute.
It doesn't compute. It doesn't
Okay.
work.
Yep.
So what I know, at least in my view, is that accountability. When you have accountability structures, accountability systems in the business, your leaders believe in accountability. They hold each other accountable. Then you can do anything.
Give us a couple of examples of accountability done well and accountability done badly in systems and companies that might help some of our listeners think about it. For us personally, we're dealing with that in our small team of 10. How do we get accountability right? And we're struggling with it in certain areas. So give us some ideas of how's it done well and how's it done badly.
Number one, I'll tell you, I'll go back down to my client, my person that took over the family business. No KPIs, no deliverables. Nobody in the business had a job description. Nobody said to Joe, "Hey Joe, I need these 10 things done by the end of the week." There was no way to track it, no way to measure.
It's amazing how some businesses exist and do well without all these things for so long.
I mean, it's like putting a team on the field without a game plan,
and
nobody knows what position they're going to play. Right? I mean, that's what it's like. It's like putting a football team out on the field and say, just go out and play, and nobody knows who's doing what and what the.
Wow.
And so, lucky despite themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a very drastic example.
Extreme, but paints the picture.
But the point of the matter is the business had no structure. It had structure, but it didn't have. Nobody knew what they were supposed to deliver.
Okay.
They were just told, "Hey, go put that up, or go do that." There was no consistency in what you had to deliver, so that the company didn't have any goals. The company didn't say, "I want to have a revenue goal. We have a revenue goal of this every year." Right. And so to me, accountability in that sense means let's have an understanding of where we want to go. Let's have a roadmap to where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. And
don't need accountability if you've got no goals.
Right. You don't. You don't. And then the other part of that is what is your responsibility in getting us there? What is my responsibility in getting us there? So that we all know what we're supposed to deliver and when, with a timeline and the tools to be able to do it. And then we're going to check in and see how you are doing on that progress. We're going to check in weekly and say, how are you doing on the 5 things that you're supposed to be doing? What are your roadblocks? What are your challenges? What's getting in the way? But how are you doing on that progress?
So putting some basics of business principles in place for accountability to have a home and have a role. And so in that process, obviously, we could probably unpick that a lot in terms of that's a very big cultural shift,
100%.
Process shift. You're going to have some squeaky wheels and some things, work and not work in that transition. But to come at that example, there was a lot of fundamental principles not existing, putting them in place, and that accountability, check-ins regularly. So it's about clarity, frequency of check-in. When it isn't showing progress or hitting the end result, often there might be progress, but it's in wrong direction and we're not linking it to the result. How do you deal with some of those things, accountability when it's tough? Accountability when it's going well, everyone's happy. Accountability when things aren't being hit. What's some of the best tips or kind of thought processes around that?
Well, number one, what I like about the system that we have, which we call the accountability management system, is those problems are more obvious earlier than, if you check in with your team every 3 months, every quarter, and you realize you're 3 months behind on your deliverables, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
So catch things early by the system design.
It catches things weekly. Those problems you start to see a pattern after a couple of weeks. Then you can intervene as a leader or a manager and say, what is going on here that is getting in our way of achieving our goals? Then you can do something about it. Okay. Whatever that action needs to be.
shift, training, new people, whatever it may be, new
Right.
system, software, process, any of the above to help.
There's a breakdown
Yeah.
somewhere, you can take
Yeah.
action on it.
Okay.
Now, this system is very transparent. So the other part of this, what I love about a system like we're talking about, and this, by the way, wasn't created just by us. This Alan Mulally used this system at Ford and Boeing, and this is a little more detailed version of what Alan did. But the reason it worked at Ford was everybody in their weekly meeting sat down and they were transparent about, they had to be transparent about how they were doing.
Yeah.
And if they didn't want to participate, Alan said, nice to have you, but
yeah,
it's, so this is mandatory part of the culture. It's a mandatory, you have to say and buy into the concept of, I'm going to be honest. If I didn't accomplish something, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
There may be a tougher conversation at the end of the day.
It's incredibly revealing, isn't it? When you set that stall out to say, we're going to be transparent, you can't hide. You can't hide. And perhaps many people have been hiding for a long time. And when that comes out, it can be quite, quite fearful of that situation to maybe hide, fudge numbers. We've just rewatched The Wire. I don't know if you ever watched the series 20 odd years ago, and we went back to it. And there was one of the seasons where it's focusing in from the police side and sort of the political part of fudging the numbers, the stats, because they want to see reduction in crime. They want to see this. So they'll just write the stats differently.
That's right.
So that will categorize as this, and it's not as bad as this. So, oh yes, our stats have got better. So we can hide for a while around the data and the stats of what it is, but it's often that transition of, I'm now seen. I want to be seen, but on my terms. I want to be seen when it's the right things, but I don't want to be seen if it's not all there. And I think that's one of the real challenges many leaders and people are finding right now, is we're trying to do things we haven't done before. We've got technology coming in that we don't have the answers for or how it's going to affect. And I'm now being seen for that. I'm being judged for that. I'm being held accountable for that. And I don't understand it. So I think there's a real challenge of accountability being placed, responsibility being placed without the competency to execute.
100%.
And that's true of a lot of managers by proxy, CEO by proxy. So what comes first, or is it in tandem, or those sorts of things, between the capability and capacity to achieve before then there's accountability? Because otherwise, is it just set up for failure? If I'm holding you accountable, but I know you've got no capability in it.
Yeah, I think there's got to be, there's got to have some common sense here.
Okay.
Right. In a couple of these examples, those companies I'm talking about, there's certainly there are capacity issues.
Okay.
Right. And what the system does is it makes those very obvious. So you have to have some grace and understanding as a CEO, founder, leader, where those holes are, and then this gives you a real pinpointed area of focus where you can develop talent, and you can create that skill set. Right. You can't hold somebody accountable. You can't hold somebody accountable if you don't give them the tools.
If you don't give them the tools,
right.
Capability, period. Okay.
Right.
I think enough.
Right. And so that goes to setting the right goals and the right.
So that'd be a really good audit, wouldn't it be, in terms of in organisations and within your role? How many people have you assumed accountability for, accepted accountability for, areas in which you do not have capability?
Right.
And I know in my role, there's things I'm accountable for, and I haven't got the capability yet.
No. But the part of your accountability is, if you know that,
to recognise it and say, help.
Part of my accountability, part of what I have to deliver now is
requires
that capability.
Yeah.
Right. I've got this hole. I need to fix it. So now it's on me to focus on that, intentionally focus on. Because what you're talking about, what we're asking CEOs and founders and leaders and managers today is to see around corners that we have no idea. Right. And so I think There's got to be some common sense in this, but it should give you an idea of where the holes are that you've got to fill.
And it links to another great concept that was coined through Dean Jackson, and Dan then wrote a book about it, Who Not How. Often we default to how. We're given something, how. Right?
How.
What's my project plan? How to do that.
All the time.
We default to how because we either have experience, we've got to do it by a certain time. Who not how changes that entire conversation, that entire thought, even of what is capable, what we can achieve. I want to keep these episodes tight. All of my episodes normally go on 40-50 minutes because you just get started, right? But I do have a question that I've asked more or less of every guest on the episode.
Okay.
And it harks back to our very first episode with a lady, Diane, Dr. Diane Hamilton, who focuses on curiosity. So she was our first guest. Wow. And in homage to her, it's a question around that and firsts. So the question is, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Wow, that's a great question. That is a really, really good question. So about 3 months ago, I was in Bali, and I had never gone kite surfing. And so something I'd seen and been around and done it, but never done it. So took lessons, and it was an utter disaster. I fell on my face every time. Was sore as I could be the next day, using muscles I didn't know that I had. Yeah. But it was so much fun. And
as you become familiar with, as you meditate, as you journal, as you reflect on that, if you just took a moment of that experience, let me know what shows up when you do it. Just take a minute to reflect on that experience and share what shows up.
It reminded me that you have to start and that you're never an expert. And I thought, I went into that thinking, okay, I'm a pretty good surfer. I'm a pretty good skier. I have good balance. This will be easy. I'll get up and I'll get out. No problem.
Yeah. I have adjacent skill sets. How complicated could it be?
I said exactly that. The same thing. How complicated could it? How hard could this be?
How hard could it be?
Yeah. And it was hard.
And humbling. Go in with a beginner's mindset, even if you think you have some adjacent.
And I didn't. I did that time. I didn't. I went in with, I got this. Yep. That's no problem. And the guy said to me, and my instructor said to me, "This is going to be hard. It's harder than you think." And I dismissed it. I'm like, I got this. So, losing a GoPro later that fell off it got knocked off my wrist. Later, and like not being able, being frustrated with it, but continuing to do it, coming back to taking a second to breathe and say, you know what, this is not easy. I have to be willing to start somewhere. I wasn't good at most things the first time that I did them.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Calm. Beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
It's going to take practice.
So is there something in your next 90 days that you can create a pathway to that might leverage some of that insight? So there's something that exists in your next 90-day visibility that you could connect a pathway from that insight?
Funny you should ask. We do a group coaching with with that first company we talked about. With their high potentials. And we talked about and starting to develop a series of 1-hour sessions for them, probably 3, on beginner's mindset and about managing and leading people, which they're starting to do all of them are new at that. So they're going to have some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Right. But they have to approach it with that beginner's mindset and that curiosity that Diane talks about, because that's what's going to serve them well in learning how to lead and learning how to manage.
Adjacency skill set, going to put that onto this and think, well, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Is to create space for that. It's why we have safety nets when we do the trapeze for the first time. It's why we have safety things. How many of us are thinking about in our organizations, of ourselves, of our businesses, we're asking people to do things, but we're not creating the environment for that to feel, I'm going to be using muscles I've not used before, and I'm going to cause pain that I've not caused before. How do we make that an area in which doesn't say, well, I'm not bloody doing that again, or I'm doing it again, but I'm gritted teeth, I'm tense, and therefore you failed. We need to be with grace, at ease, when it's going to hurt.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, that was a great question, because out of that experience, it made me think of and reminded me that we have to approach new things with that mindset, and that I won't say it's arrogance, but that overconfidence sometimes can bite you as a new manager or a new leader, right?
And hey, it's the beautiful paradox of duality, right? That it can serve us.
Right.
You watch young kids go surfing or skiing first time. They got, the balls and confidence to just go for it. And often that can also pay off. So it's having that duality of, the naivety. Well, if I knew it was going to be like that, I'd never do it in the first place. I'd never start.
That's right.
To I know it's going to be bad, but I'll create some places and ways in which I can ease my way through that first principles.
And then power through when it's tough.
Yeah. So as we close out, two final pieces. How do people get in touch with you if they're inspired by what you've shared, if they want to find out a bit more? I don't know how much is owned IP, or whether you have any of these things, matrix and resources available. How do they contact you? Let's do that one first.
Okay. Rhett at rhettpower.com. They can go on the website, rhettpower.com, accountabilityinc.io. They can reach out, get in touch. We're very responsive. I'm also all over the internet, so Forbes, LinkedIn, any of those ways, please reach out.
And I want to give a final opportunity to, is there anything you really wanted to share that you haven't had the opportunity to share that you'd like to?
It's just a pleasure to be here, Ross. This is an honor. Good to be here with you in Las Vegas. I can't wait to come down to see the booth today and what you guys are doing. And you're just doing incredible work. I was talking to somebody at dinner about it last night.
Cool.
And about the assessment and about what we were talking about. And so just a real pleasure.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.